Welcome to Recross the Paths. My name is Cade, and today I'm joined by Dan. Welcome, Dan. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, Cade. Nice to talk to you again.
It is nice to talk again. I guess we got to connect here at Cube for a Cause up in Brooklyn. A nice trip for me, but really more of your home turf there, yeah?
Yeah, I guess I heard you say up in Brooklyn. I was like, no, Brooklyn is south of me because I grew up outside of New York City in Jersey, but I have been living for the last 15, 16 years in the Boston area. I live in Somerville, Massachusetts. Shout out to all of the local Cube groups and the Draft Punks and everybody up here.
Yeah, shout outs for sure. Yeah, I got to learn as, a native Oklahoman going to the big city that it's much bigger than I anticipated and how it feels in many ways like each part of the city is its own, larger community. And it was cool to see how people came together through that.
Yeah, no, I think about that Onion headline. I think it was about Oklahoma. It was like rural Oklahoman. Not sure if they can handle the frantic pace of Tulsa or something like that.
Well, as somebody who actually lives in Tulsa, I can handle that much, but
I mean, yeah, maybe I can't handle the pace. I've never been. But
yeah, we'll do some cultural exchange programs here, Dan.
yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, so we got to connect up there at that event, spend a little bit of time chatting, and I'm just really excited to get to sit down and talk about one of your projects. And my dear friend Bones will be so thrilled that we are finally getting to do this too. He's a big fan of you and your work.
Awesome. Well, I'm a big fan of Bones, and it's always nice seeing Bones and seeing the rest of the Tulsa crew around at Cube events.
Hopefully, more of that in the future. We'll see. Well, as we jump in to to this cube that I'm so excited to talk about, I want to ask which came first for you, a love of basketball or a care for magic?
I wish I could say the love of basketball. That was a lot more incidental. I am a child of the 90s. My birthday is on the 23rd, so I was a huge fan of Michael Jordan as a kid.
Sure.
But I wasn't really watching a lot of games. I did love Space Jam, and my dad kind of works in sports, so I was kind of ambiently aware. But I got into Magic very, very early in elementary school, I think. So I was certainly a Magic fan first, and then in my 20s got more into basketball and sports.
So when you were playing Magic, what did that look like? Was that mostly kitchen table? Did that evolve to other things?
Yeah, it was a funny story. My mom was called up by my best friend, Sam Nathanson's mom, and it was like a game of telephone where, I was invited to a play date and I heard my mom say, Sam's mom says that he has some magic tricks he wants to show you or something like that. And, my mom not knowing what magic cards were. This is maybe 1997, I'm guessing. And I was like, well, I think I might be a little too old for magic tricks right now. I'm not in kindergarten anymore, but I went to visit, and it turned out there were portal decks there that my friend had gotten, and we played those a lot, and I was immediately hooked. I loved the art and trying to piece together the rules. My friend was 2 years older than me, so a little bit further along in terms of strategy and brain development overall. So I lost basically every game we played for years, but was completely addicted. Then I got into Limited in middle school, which was around Onslaught, Mirrodin, I think were the first sets I really remember drafting at a local game store in New Jersey. It was kind of the typical, sadly, the more frequent kid trading all of his fetch lands away for, worthless but cool looking dragon cards,
Oh no.
by kind of less savory types in early 2000s Jersey, but had fun drafting. Always liked that more than constructed because it was harder to find all the cards for a deck. And then I kind of lapsed through college, but played a little Ravnica, a little Time Spiral draft, and then right after graduating college in around 2012, I heard about Cube on one of the Magic online websites at that time, and I built a clone of the Pauper Cube, which at the time was edited and curated by Adam Staborski, and started playing that a lot, but only really got back into Magic in a regular way in the last 3 or 4 years.
That sounds like a familiar journey of like the flow in and out of the game in different ways. And I don't think it's fair to call it hardship necessarily, but it sounds like you came from kind of an uphill battle in some ways of losing to your friend a whole lot and then, getting
Yeah,
kind of getting rinsed in trades at the local shop. And yet you stuck with it.
I was a very bad player too. I mean, I don't get tilted that easily, and I was just happy to be there. And it's only been recently that my overall lifetime record of games won is creeping closer to 50%, maybe. It'll still take a while, I think. But I think one thing that I'm sure this is a common story for folks who have played Magic across several decades, from the 90s into the 2000s into the present day, is that it's just so much easier to find people with whom to play now in person as well as online. And also people who, in my opinion, are friendly and welcoming and non-judgmental and good hangs. So that's been a blessing. And I'm glad to live in the Boston area where there's a huge amount of Magic players and a huge amount of cubers and cube designers and people who have very strong opinions about cube.
Well, Dan, I want to narrow in a little bit and ask why Cube? You're a creative person. You've got background in music and other things like that. So why has Cube piqued your interest here?
I mentioned before, I love limited. I love drafting and building a deck every single time. I find it just really exciting to just get to recombine cards in different ways. And that's one thing that I appreciate about Cube as someone who plays a lot of retail limited, is that I see all of these cool cards that sometimes get forgotten about outside of their particular limited format. And I'll think, oh well, this two color uncommon from March of the Machine was so good in that format and I loved how it played, and if only I could keep playing with it. And a lot of my cubes are a little bit lower powered, or I maintained a Pauper cube for a really long time as my kind of main cube, so I like getting to play with those cards again. And I also, as someone who has a pretty unique sort of I don't know if artistic is the right word, um, altered cube, I think that the ability to sort of make a strange thing and get other people to play with it and get other people to sort of appreciate this aesthetic experience that's familiar but still very different than a game of normal Magic is very fun as a game designer and as a player.
Yeah, I love it. So that we don't bury the lead here, and so that my initial question about basketball and Cube doesn't sound like a total non sequitur.
Yeah, oh
let's
yeah.
let's talk a little bit about Hoopin. Dan, this is a really cool project. How would you give the elevator pitch or the overview for Hoopin?
Yeah, so Hoopin is a 360 card cube that will invite you to come on and slam and welcome your favorite magic creatures and spells to the jam. It's a cube where every single card that's not a land is altered with a basketball sticker. So it is a sticker cube, but not, in the way where you're adding degenerate rules text and giving everything storm. It's a cube where all of the cards have a little basketball sticker placed on them, sometimes kind of cut out with an X-Acto knife, so that the art is always of someone who is holding a basketball or dunking a basketball, or there's some cards that the art is just a basketball now. Like I have some spell bombs in there. There's an Oblivion Stone. There's the art with like the close up of the hand holding the stone. So I found
Oh, that's
I've
so good.
I have about 3 or 4 different sizes and colors of stickers that I found can basically cover every size of like orb or sphere or sort of magical ball of energy that's on a magic card. When you look at on Cube Cobra, you can look at the visual spoiler of the cube, and that actually reminds me, I ought to set this as the default view because if you just look at, I have uploaded custom scans of all of the cards, and I think if you just take a look at that, it might give you a sense of whether this is a cube you would want to draft. There's one card that is not a land that doesn't have a sticker on it, and that's the card Jeskai Baller from one of the mystery booster sets, because that card is straight up an art of a Jeskai monk dunking a real basketball. So I didn't feel the need to change that one.
Yeah, to alter an alter kind of loses that.
And so the other aspect of the cube beyond just these arts is that it is kind of an emblem cube where you start each game with the card Contested Game Ball from Lost Caverns of Ixalan in the command zone. It's shared between players, and there's just a little bit of extra emblemy rules text that says essentially the first player to deal combat damage to their opponent gets the ball out of the command zone, assuming that there is no game ball on the battlefield at that time. And then that is for those that don't remember this kind of bad artifact from the Lost Caverns of Ixalan limited format, to refresh your memory, it's a 2 mana artifact that you can pay 2 generic mana and tap it to draw a card and put a point counter on it. If you've put, I think, the 5th point counter on, you sacrifice the ball and make a treasure token as the effect resolves. And the other bit of text on it is whenever an opponent deals combat damage to you, they gain control of the contested game ball. So when it's in play, you are constantly trying to find attacks so you can get your enemy's ball. There's a lot of different angles I'm trying to put in with offense and defense in the cube. So different colors and different strategies will have ways to set up profitable attacks or go very wide where maybe you want to swing in with a bunch of little dorks in the hopes that one of them will be unblocked and you can steal the ball away, or you're trying to establish some defenses where if you could play a creature that makes additional creatures to just kind of shore up your defenses when you have the ball and try to hold on to it and use its ability to gain more cards. And then also kind of like in commander games, if the ball would be removed from play, it returns to the command zone. My intention with the cube is that there shouldn't be anything that can kind of permanently lock down the ball and keep that out of gameplay. We want
Right.
people to be passing the ball around. We want people to be dunking, people to be scoring.
It's not in the spirit of the rules. Yeah, you don't want to just knock it out of the game.
Exactly, yeah, and I've had to talk with Bones a lot in when I was getting this cube ready for the last Boston Cube party, just to make sure that I worded everything on. I have 8 contested game balls that I've decorated with different numbers of basketball stickers to serve as seating cards. And on the back, I've printed up a little rules insert that explains these extra rules as a reference when you're drafting. And had to be very careful about how I worded those effects for this to make sure it works the way I want.
Yeah, there's so much of that, trying to find the balance of, well, yeah, you get how this works, but also having it set up in a way that somebody could just pick it up and play it if you needed.
Exactly. And I think especially with a cube like this that, I don't want to use the word gimmicky, but it's a unique sort of cube. This is pretty different than what a lot of people expect, drafting a legacy cube or even a pauper cube. There's new rules that you have to think about. So with
Yeah.
something like this, my goal is always to get people to play it a second time or a third time or a fourth time. because there's one thing to sort of bring people in on the novelty and, say, hey, play my wacky basketball cube. A lot of people will find that fun the first time, but I also want them to appreciate the gameplay and want to play it again just because it's a fun cube, and even after the novelty's worn off a little bit.
Do you think of Hoopin as a gimmick environment yourself? Like, do you want players to take it more seriously than that?
I mean, I am happy if people are playing it and they can think it's as silly as they want, but I have really appreciated learning what this cube wants and how to build around the emblem, making the contested game ball a sort of important feature in gameplay. At first, when I started making this cube, this was actually based on an idea my friend James and I had when we were at MagicCon Chicago last year. And I think we were just looking at card art during some event and thinking about, how, the art for Ponder looks like you're holding a bunch of basketballs or something. There was, some Eldrazi art from Modern Horizons 3 that they were previewing or something, and we were just like, oh, it's dunking. And then I started thinking about, well, like, oh, maybe you can find cards like this and we could decorate them with stickers. And it's really hard to narrow that down. At first, I decided on making it a pretty budget cube. Like, no card is worth more than $2, I think. Just because, I'm defacing them. So
So like you didn't land on things like Mox Diamond, though those do look basketball shaped.
No, that would be very funny, but I don't think I'll ever be able to do that. I think the most expensive card in here is Resurrection Orb, and I put the sticker on it, and then I looked at it and realized it was like $7 or $8, and I was like, well, it's an orb. It's got to go in the cube.
I say worth it.
Yeah.
Worth it. It seems like
Totally. Yeah, I already had that one too, so it's a very loose budget restriction. It's not rarity restricted, and then I coming up with the idea of getting this contested game ball card into the cube and making that a feature of gameplay was also really useful for cutting things down and helping me figure out, okay, I'm searching through Scryfall and the art tags for like sphere, orb. You get into really esoteric ones like reaching hand, or it's like there's a couple of pointing finger tags that I've used to find cards where you can sort of have a basketball spinning on someone's outstretched finger.
Yeah, those are amazing. It's so funny.
Yeah, the erratic visionary from War of the Spark is like a merfolk looter kind of thing. But
that one's tremendous.
yeah, like it's fun to find that, but then also I always wanted this one to be a 360 cube, and now I could kind of think with the contested game ball in the mix, you can think about like, okay, are there effects that care about you having artifacts on the battlefield? Maybe there's a deck where you can sacrifice artifacts for value and you can do something clever like, okay, maybe I start the turn with the contested game ball. I can, tap it, draw a card off of it, sacrifice it to an Orcish Vandal or to some other effect, and then go to combat, swing in with my creatures, get a ball back from the command zone, and then do something else with it. There's not a lot of proliferate stuff in here, but there are point counters on the ball, so that's a thing that you can occasionally manipulate. It's also a thing that can let me, sort of prioritize different effects that care about you drawing extra cards. There are some things like that were printed in like MH3 that care about that, and the Brothers War, so some of that stuff is in the cube. And, other effects like that, even just like figuring out which blue draw spells I want to have in here. Because if the kind of going rate for card draw in this cube is 2 generic mana and tapping this game ball to draw a card, then things that cost 1 or 2 mana that drew just one card without a whole lot of filtering just didn't seem worth it. And so I could kind of think about where I wanted other things to fall with a power level based on that.
Well, it sounds like you get so many hooks with something like the ball too. You said that helps narrow in the sorts of things you want in the environment.
Yeah, I've been happy to get some commentary from local friends where, I've heard at least one person say like, oh, I'm sick of emblem cubes, but this is an emblem cube that, feels really well done, and it's not just put in to be a sort of wacky, gimmicky thing. I appreciate that because, I do want people to think that I have spent time kind of playtesting this environment
Yeah,
and trying to think about what are the consequences of having this emblem. And I'm sure there's still plenty of corner cases and interesting things you can do with the ball that we haven't discovered yet. And that's the fun of Cube.
absolutely, absolutely. Do you expect most games to revolve around the ball, Dan, or like are there strategies that ignore it completely?
I think you're always going to want to get the ball and to hold on to it as often as you can. And I like to think there are ways that you can sort of set up attacks where you can punch through your opponent's defenses. Like, I'm always trying to monitor as I put new cards in and change things up, not tipping the balance too hard towards aggro or towards control. Like, I don't want the cube to always be everyone turning all of their creatures sideways every single time and drawing cards off the ball, and just,
Yeah.
cracking back endlessly. But I also don't want it to be, the first person to get the ball can just build up and your opponent can never get it.
Yeah, like you're just playing keep away, right?
Yeah, and I
Like
mean,
monarchy or initiative
yeah,
or
and
something.
defense wins championships, to be clear. But, I don't want to you don't want it to not be rewarded being able to set up a good defense. But I also try to think about, there are lots of different effects that can, give a creature flying, or, different kinds of evasion, or make a creature unblockable for a turn. And I like having those things where you have to commit some resources to making that happen rather than just, having a creature that's unblockable. It's also a cube where I found one drops are really important
Yeah.
because, if you can play a one drop, then you can get the ball on turn two. And if you don't have a two drop or anything else, you can use that 2 mana to draw a card. So there's a lot of different one drops in this cube, and a lot of them might look a little strange on first glance, but they are very useful in building a deck in this cube. So that's one thing I would recommend to anyone drafting Hoopin. Pay attention to your one drops. You probably want them regardless of what kind of deck you are in.
Yeah, and speaking of what kind of deck folks are in, do you aim for particular themes or decks when you put this together, or is that something that has come about more organically?
It's a little bit of both. I maybe because I play a lot of retail limited, and I also played a lot of the official Pauper Cube, which, has pretty defined 2 color pair archetypes. I do try to think about that. Like in blue black, there are some ninjas. And, I think this cube is a kind of power level where ninjas can be pretty cool.
And blocking matters a lot.
Yeah, blocking matters. There's a lot of times when you can kind of bluff some ninja stuff because people might think, oh, are you just trying to swing in with these creatures just in the hopes of getting a ball from one of them? Or do you have a ninja? How much am I going to get punished for blocking everything? And then there's other, effects that you can destroy a creature that's been dealt damage and all that usual kind of stuff to, make for interesting combat steps. So, some of the things are a little more defined, like blue red is kind of a wizard's archetype.
Named after the basketball team, I think.
Kind of, sort of. I don't want to play favorites, but I do like that there are wizards in here. I try to make references to, NBA basketball slang. Like, there are a lot of cards with rebound.
Sure.
There's also a lot of,
That's I didn't
if
catch
you
that. That's really funny.
Yeah, if you spend time on NBA Twitter, you'll hear a lot of people arguing about whether certain NBA players have aura, and using the aura as a term for measuring basically how cool different basketball stars are. So there is a bit of an auras theme that's mostly in white and green. And there's, some other things, like other friends have helped me notice these things sometimes where I don't even think of it until we're drafting, and someone's like, wow, it's really funny that you have this specific card in here. Like, another kind of basketball slang term is like calling somebody a free throw merchant, like they're just out to,
Oh, sure.
get fouled and get free throws. And so there's like, I have Merchant of the Veil in here just because the pose was
The one like
good. I could
spinning the ball on the finger.
yeah, he's got like an outstretched hand. He's kind of spinning a ball. And then, a friend of mine was like, it's a discard merchant, just making jokes about that. There's like, from the Fallout Commander set, I have James Wandering Dad. And now we actually have an NBA where LeBron James is playing on a basketball team along with his son.
The Wandering Dad.
So
That's so funny.
yeah, my brother pointed that one out to me when I showed him the cube list, and he's not a Magic player, but he is a basketball fan, and I I was really tickled by that. But to circle back around, I put some things in, like when I'm trying to fill out like multicolored spots, I try to look for things that can synergize across colored pairs, and that could help me narrow things down for a 360 cube. But I also see a lot of decks when this is drafted that cut across different archetypes, or that find things to do in color pairs that I might not be expecting. And I am generally the kind of cube designer who likes the idea of having tighter decks. I don't want fixing to be so good and so plentiful that every deck ends up being like a 4 or 5 color greed pile. I like when things are a little more streamlined, and maybe that's just the pauper cube drafter in me where everything enters tapped. But, I think the fixing is such that you can support decks that are not just 10 of one basic, 7 of another, only playing, these cards, no splashing.
Yeah. In considering Hoopin, do you think that your aesthetic goals more inform your gameplay or mechanical ideas, or do you think it's the other way around? Like, is one subservient to the other?
It's a feedback loop. I initially started putting the list together based on aesthetics, and then play tested it a bunch before I got a draft together where I could sort of see what played really badly, both in terms of just stuff that was not powerful enough or too powerful, or things that created gameplay patterns that I wanted to discourage, things that just made combat not tense or tricky enough.
Mm,
I always want the combat step to feel like there's a lot of different potential things. I want people to think about, what combat tricks or instant speed effects they've seen during the draft that could affect how they want to block. And I think now I've also gotten better at putting these stickers on cards, where I feel like it's a lot easier for me to figure out how to add a sticker to a card and make it look in theme, while adding new cards that have been printed that will do something cool for the gameplay. I love Edge of Eternities. I need to update more with Edge of Eternities, because like every black card in this set has like a miniature black hole, and there's all these robots and these space vampires like holding these orbs already. So it's so easy. Uh,
Wizards finally got your letters.
I've heard someone at Wizards has seen this cube and thinks it's funny. So, maybe. They have printed, I think, like 4 cards. Like if you go to Scryfall and you search art tag basketball, there's the Jeskai Baller, and then there's one unhinged card with gotcha. It's like a kill spell, where you can gotcha your opponent and bring it back to your hand, and it's like a squirrel with like a million different objects getting thrown
That's
at it,
right. It's like
including a
kill
basketball.
destroy, I think is the
Yeah,
name of
that's right. Kill, destroy.
it.
And then there's 2 DFC transformers.
Oh, that's yeah.
It's like the
Is
ones that turn
is it
into boom boxes,
is it
like
DJ?
Soundwave. And
Yeah.
yeah, and in the initial build of this cube, I tried to see if I could make those work, but those were just getting 15th picked
Mm.
all the time, and I got rid of them. There's one DFC in the cube still, which I wouldn't mind not having any DFC, but it's braided net from
Oh, sure.
Ixalan,
Yeah.
and I gotta have the net card in. There's another one that someone pointed out to me recently is also from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. There's a card called Clay Fired Bricks, which could
Yeah,
actually be a sentence that someone could say about Clay Thompson,
that's
who's
really
currently
funny.
on Dallas. Like, oh, he's shooting bricks tonight.
That's
He's not hitting the hoop. So I do kind of want to get that in there too.
No, I love this aesthetic idea, like trying to find all these little flavorful hooks. Something that I'm thinking about as you mentioned it there, that there were cards that were going last pick, right? It's like something that grabbed the theme but that wasn't getting picked up. Like, do you think there's a space in a project like this for, I don't know, what some people would call like the art cards, the things that you would look at and just go, that's really clever or funny, but that doesn't necessarily contribute to the play environment?
Yeah, well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, there have been some darlings I've had to murder there. I do keep the cards that I remove from the cube, most of which I'll remove just for gameplay reasons. I have a little binder that I'll take with me when I'm playing this. It's the Hoopin Hall of Fame, where you can see all of my previous attempts to balance this cube. And like, I had the Ramanap excavator in for a while. I think there's a promo version of it that
Yeah,
where like the
hands
snake
overhead.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, raising the hands up, and it's just a great pose. But there wasn't really anything you could do with it in this cube, like not so much mill nor fetch lands nor ways to, certainly not a strip mine or anything like that. So just
Well, I
wasn't.
mean, you do strip the ball sometimes, right? So,
It's true, yeah. I do worry too about, because I'm changing the art on these cards in some cases kind of drastically. Like, some of these stickers are pretty big, and
you mentioned like the resurrection orb, the things like that, where it takes up so much of the card.
yeah, and like, I don't want you to confuse, like, oh, this is the spell bomb that can shock something, and then find out it's actually like the spell bomb that makes the thing unable to block,
Mm.
and they're both a basketball sticker on like a red background. I mean, I think there's other ways to make things that are distinctive in the art, but I am kind of careful about like making cards where the art is just giant basketball. I don't want it to be hard to tell like what that is, both during the draft and in play.
I think that's wise. We often think about accessibility, and it is kind of funny that even something like this, that is like the conceit of the cube, that you still have to think about that the players are just going to
Yeah,
track basketballs after a while.
it usually doesn't happen, because most of the time, like, the hand that I'm going to put a sticker on is kind of facing towards the top of the art, but I don't want to block any rules text. I don't
Yeah.
really, it like basically never comes up in the cube, but I also am wary of blocking like the type line or anything. I don't want it to be difficult to know, what creature type something is, if that ends up mattering in gameplay. But blocking the card names, I get a little nervous about that, in case like I'm trying to submit this to some cube event and they have a rule against that. I'm trying to think in terms of like altered cards, where, right,
Yeah.
you usually want to have the name on the rules text clear.
Yeah, your official tournament rules for card legality look a little bit different than, hey, I have a curated project where, Raymond App Excavator is holding a basketball.
Yeah. I'm thinking about that because Spider-Man is the new set coming out. I'm thinking about that one Spider-Man comic panel where there's the villain who's like a big dinosaur guy, and Spider-Man is like, with your scientific knowledge, you could have cured cancer, and like the guy's like, but I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs.
That's right.
Why are you turning people into dinosaurs instead of whatever? Um,
So you feel like you're the pterodactyl in this comic
yeah,
panel?
I want to put basketballs on cards, and I want to, maintain a cube where every card is hooping it up.
It's so good. I did
It,
want to ask the practical question. Dan, how long do you think it took to do the initial stickering process for this project?
it was several weeks. I did it in probably like 8 sittings, because first you have to look at the cards and figure out which stickers work best on it. Like at first, a lot of the cards I wanted to put in here, the stickers I got were just a little bit too big, where it was like, kind of comically huge. And it's like, it is funny if they're holding a big basketball, but then sometimes you just need a different proportion. So I went out and found smaller stickers, which were on like a green background. So, like, the smallest stickers I had to cut out from the sticker sheet by hand to clear all
Oh,
of the
wow.
extra around. Um, and that was really painful. Like, I'm not getting any younger, and my wrists were really hurting. Yeah, beyond just like the wrist stress of like sleeving hundreds of cards and
Yeah.
all of that.
To your point, there's some of them that are very funny. You see the art that it's like that is comical in its presentation, and there are others that kind of like you described. It's like, man, this character is jamming. Like that's
Yeah,
so cool. Like, and you want to be excited about that, and not feel like they're all silly.
yeah. I think about Feldon of the Third Path is one that I feel pretty happy about in terms of, I guess, recontextualization. Where now the flavor text "she will come back to me" is, I guess, referring to like the basketball. I'm gonna get that rebound.
That's so
But
good. I was going to say for flavor, the one that's been sticking in my brain is Rimrock Knight.
oh
that one,
yeah, he's rocking
that
the
one makes
rim.
me,
He's taking it to the rim. I
that one
also
makes me so happy.
yeah, I mean, I love Rimrock Knight just in general. So that was like kind of a gameplay one where I was like, you know what card would be really cool here? I think I want Rimrock Knight, but also I was like, yeah, like that sounds like a basketball thing. And then also, if you've ever played, there's a very obscure indie RPG game that I played in college called Charles Barkley's Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, which is
Whoa,
like
no, that's a
a
brand new one for me.
okay, this is about to get way sillier, but it was like a freeware fan made sort of 2D 8-bit style Japanese RPG where you play Charles Barkley in the years after basketball has been outlawed, because during a game Charles Barkley performed the chaos dunk and it destroyed a city or something like that. And along the way, you try to restore basketball to the universe, and one of the characters you meet is a basketball playing dwarf and cyber dwarf, and Rimrock Knight is maybe my subtle nod to that game as well.
And how did that get passed over for the Space Jam script?
I think this came out in like the early mid 2010s, so it
Oh,
was it
okay.
was
So this is
post
much
Space
later. Okay,
Jam.
okay.
Um, I still love that the movie Space Jam God made. It's still so strange to me that all of those things were combined. But
Yeah. Well, and that they made another one too.
oh yeah, we don't talk about that one. It's
We don't talk about Wandering Dad, huh?
yeah, yeah. I mean, LeBron was made to be in a Space Jam movie. He's a significantly better actor than Michael Jordan ever was, but I feel bad. That movie just feels kind of soulless compared to the original one.
I mean, I really didn't intend to dog on Space Jam. It is
Yeah.
new and certainly an
the
experience.
no, the first Space Jam is great. I still stand by that movie, and I have a cassette of the soundtrack that I will play during games if people will let me. And it's a great
Yes,
soundtrack.
it is a good soundtrack.
Yeah. I also have, like a playlist for the cube, which if anyone is making a clone of this cube, I mean, first I'll say you really, really want to spread out the sticker sessions to be easy on your wrists, but also I will give you the playlist that I'm using. You want to have, Sirius by Alan Parsons Project on there. You want Round Ball Rock by John Tesh, the NBA on NBC theme song. Bum, 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 uh, It's
I
I
mean,
would
it's game
recommend.
time.
Yeah.
You gotta have the soundtrack to go with it.
So I've had this at a Cube for a Cause earlier this year in New York City and Brooklyn. I had it as a featured cube in a Boston Cube Party this past year in April, and you can't really be blasting music from a boombox, in a big event space next to hundreds of other people trying to draft cubes that are less basketball themed. But if you're doing a home draft, I love pulling that stuff out.
So do I remember hearing correctly that one of your, I don't know if it's a secret goals, but one of your goals would be to potentially draft this at the, is it the Basketball Hall of Fame or the
Yes.
museum?
So in Springfield, Massachusetts, the Basketball Hall of Fame is there. And I don't think there's like a suitable play space in the museum. It's been a really long time since I've been, but I would love to arrange a little joint visit. You can carpool with me from Boston and we'll go to the Hall of Fame. We'll check it out. And then we'll go to a bar or somewhere with an 8 top table and we will draft the cube.
Someplace that'll let you play the soundtrack.
Yes, ideally.
Well, if there are any docents or anybody with connections to the Basketball Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
but like that seems like the kind of connection that would be really cool for people outside the Magic space too. It's
Yeah.
like, here's this game that would be seemingly unrelated, but that represents a passion for this other game in basketball. That like in a shared space that's so unique.
I appreciate that you brought that up because that is one thing that I value very strongly is like making connections with all kinds of people through Magic. But I also like finding out other things that my Magic friends are interested in. And, I've met a lot of Magic players who want to talk ball. And, to be honest, I am only so serious of a fan. So a lot of times I can't even keep up. But, I always like, when I go to a Cube event and meet dozens of new friends from around the country. Obviously, I love talking with them about Cube and talking about Magic, but I also love when there's like a break between rounds and we can go walking around and I find, a new pizza place to try out, or someone tells me about their favorite restaurant, or, maybe we take a trip to the Basketball Hall of Fame together.
Yeah, like the connections that somehow go beyond the game.
Yeah, I never went to CubeCon in Madison, but I thought it was always very cool that like as part of the programming for that, there was like like J-Bro would do like a civic walking tour of Madison,
Mm-hmm.
which,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was awesome. Like I always appreciate, among the folks I draft with and people I cube with and, new Magic friends, like it's always nice reaching that point where I'm like, this is my friend. We both talk about cube a lot, but like I'm learning, some of the other stuff you're into, and that just deepens my connection to other cube people and Magic people.
That's awesome.
The best part of Magic is the gathering. So I've heard.
That's right.
That's also a thing that I appreciate about Cube specifically. Like I am making a game and I'm putting it in a little long box that's covered in different kind of basketball stickers, and I'll bring it to someone's house or to a bar or to a Cube event, and people will get to play it. And, we're hanging out in the real world, not driving ourselves nuts, looking at social media, touching grass, as it were. And, that's all. That all feels very nice and positive to me.
Absolutely. Well, Dan, as you're thinking about Hoopin, and there's so much to explore, and I highly recommend anyone listening who's at all interested, go look at this the visual
Yeah.
spoiler. It is a delight.
The,
And as you noted, the play is there too. The game is there too. As you think about this project, what advice would you want to share with other designers as they consider their own projects?
so I would say just playtest and playtest a lot. Think about, just how your games are going to play and what is going to make players come back for a second draft. And, that can be a lot of things, especially as like we've seen so much creativity in the kinds of cubes people are making. in the last couple of years, like emblem cubes and sort of thematic cubes and cubes that find specific things, art and like, I'm the boat cube was very inspiring to me, or thinking about
Yeah.
the cubes where you can really make the most of the Scryfall art tags. All of that stuff is very exciting to me, and I always love hearing about these like very far out concepts or like things I've just never thought about. But I also want to encourage folks to like, you don't want to just make a cube for the sake of having a really unique idea. I mean, that's what gets you kind of in the door, but then when you're in the door to the cube workshop, think about how to keep it fun and unique and exciting, from telling someone about the cube to drafting it to playing out those matches to, scheduling another one.
Yeah, I love that idea of what brings you back for the second draft. Because like I think that's a general consensus right now. Is like you could draft anything once and probably have a good time. Like you'll learn something by drafting once.
Yeah.
But how do you make it exciting to do twice?
Don't get me wrong, I also love coming up with like really, really silly cube ideas that are meant just to be silly. That also takes some thinking about, or sometimes I'm like, maybe I could actually build this. And then, having the presence of mind to think, no, this one can just stay a silly little joke and not something that I have to inflict on people. Um,
Well, I will say inflicting it on people is, I found it's a helpful thing for me. I find Bones has had to tolerate many of my late night ideas where I'll just send over, hey, here's my bad cube idea today.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, it's definitely a very different environment when it's like your group, or like, is it some kind of cube event with a bunch of people you don't know? And the thing about Boston is we have so many cubers here that it is an environment where like we are cubing basically every week. There's always someone getting a draft together of one or two or even three cubes. But because there were so many people with cubes, you can't always rely on people wanting to draft your cube week in or week out, because there's, of the pod of 8 you're in, there's probably 3 or 4 people who are like, well, I just built a new cube, so we're going to do mine next week, right? So you really want to make those those times when your cube is drafted feel memorable. In Boston too, that definitely encouraged me to play test a lot before I brought this to people, because I didn't want people's first impression of this cube to be like, oh, there's these horrible power outliers that I don't ever want to play against. I'd rather stick with my cube to draft next that doesn't have those issues.
Well, maybe a quick clarification, like first experience in that setting. Like you said, you're doing a
Yes.
lot of playtests outside of like a proper contest or display setting.
Yeah. And there's always going to be things that you won't catch as a cube designer the first time around, especially if you are, using a lot of cards that are maybe outside of the cube canon, or incorporating wacky new rules like adding a contested game ball into most play situations.
I don't know if we ever mentioned, of course, contested game ball, like a real printed card. This is not something conjured. This is a just a real card. We just dropped it in the game.
Yeah, it's a real card. At first I was like, oh, well, I'm going to put that into the list. But then, I was thinking about it, and like, the card is not good. Like, and I just, that's
so what if it was free?
That was like you were thinking earlier, I was like, should this just be like a sort of mascot of the cube, where even if it's the 15th card drafted in any given pack and no one plays with it, like it should be in the cube. But then I thought it would be more fun to, if you make it free, then that could make it something that people care about. And I had to think a lot about, how do we put this into the game that doesn't just prioritize like the player who wins the coin toss the most, and trying to figure that out where you have to kind of commit to dealing combat damage. Like, it's not going to start on any one player's board. You have to play a creature and deal combat damage, and I didn't realize that you could use the command zone for that. I think in the first the Cube Cobra overview for a while, it said that like, oh, I'm creating a zone called the NBA zone, and that's where the the contested game ball lives, and then someone was just like, you could just use the command zone for that. And
The ball is in the paint.
yeah. Oh, there you go.
Dan, would you tolerate a question outside of my area of expertise?
Oh, please.
If you had the chance to meet and shake hands with any basketball player from across history, who would you want to meet?
That is a tough question. I would be happy to meet, any of my beloved Boston Celtics. Derek White did a photo shoot recently with, I think, Sam Adams, where he was going around to all of his Boston landmarks, and I was just like, I wish I was there. Probably it's probably Michael Jordan, just from 90s child fandom. I don't need to overthink this.
No, I was just curious. Like,
Yeah.
as somebody who has only a cursory knowledge of most sports, like my basketball knowledge kind of ends with the Sega Genesis 3-point shootout game that I played growing up, and then like the brief streak in about 2014 when the Oklahoma City Thunder was really good.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's like hearing what somebody who's deep in the space is excited about. It's nice to know it's not far off. Like that you got one of the greats like Jordan, truly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good time to be watching basketball. I'm not even the biggest sports watcher, but I think it's definitely the most exciting sport to watch on TV, and probably the most exciting to watch in an arena too. And the WNBA is really fun to watch now as well. Go Liberty. And it's just an exciting time for hoops.
Well, Dan, as we trend toward wrapping up, I do want to ask one of my favorite questions, which is if you could have any card printed as a promo, what card would you pick and who would you have do the illustration?
I am going to have to pick. There's a card from one of the Magic Con unknown events. I believe it was the last Chicago one, where it's called, and I might be mistaking this, I think it's called Joe the Bull. It's like some kind of bull, and it's supposed to be Michael Jordan.
Oh, because he creates the rock.
So yeah, it's a yeah, okay, so it's a legendary creature, an ox athlete. And it's a 2/3 for 2 and a red. And when Joe enters, create a colorless equipment artifact token named Rock, which is you can pay 1 and tap and sacrifice it to deal 2 damage to any target, and equip 1, which is the same Rock token that Togo Goblin Weaponsmith makes.
That's right. Yeah.
Togo is in the cube. He is distributing the rock. Is passing the rock around. Yeah. And then Mijo has the ability from downtown, where if a source you control would deal exactly 2 damage to a permanent or player, it deals 3 damage instead.
Because it becomes the 3-point shot.
Yeah, this card would be probably too good in the cube, but I would have to include it for at least one draft. They're like playtest cards, so they're really impossible to get. If anyone went to this Magic Con and has one of these, message me on Discord.
Yeah, we'll put the call out.
But I would love to have a promo card made of Joe the Bull with illustration by Gavin Verhey or whoever designed that card and put it into this set. Or Mark Rosewater. I'd love to see a little look at me, I'm R&B stick figure dunking. That's my proposal. Printed Wizards.
I love it. I'm embarrassed to admit that it took me till just a few seconds ago to realize that this is like Morrow. It's like, Mark Rosewater. This is Michael Jordan, like you said.
Yeah.
First syllables. I didn't track that at first. You're like, it represents this person. It's like, I get it. It's like, oh no, it's literally the name.
No, yeah. It took me a second to get that as well. And then I was like, oh, this is like the Chicago unknown event. They printed the second city card and the mystery booster boxes, all that stuff.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, this has been a treat, and I'm so grateful to you for walking us through Hoopin. This has been super cool. And as you noted, there's so much to unpack. There's so much to explore, and I hope that there's more chances to do that. Hopefully get to draft it here before too long.
Yeah, no, please. If you're having a cube event, anyone who's listening to this, please message me. I mean, if you are interested in having the cube at the event, I'm always excited to travel and to cube with more people. Or just if you want to tell me what cards I need to put in this list. Send me funny photoshops of art. I love all of that stuff.
Well, if folks do want to get in touch, if they want to offer suggestions or just follow up on some of what you're doing, where should we point them?
Yeah, I am on Discord. I'm Brinkley Sound, based on an old DJ name I had in college. Brinkley Sound. You can add me or DM me there. I am on Blue Sky as I think dant.bsky.social. And yeah, if you're in the Boston area, then look out for me there. I am drafting, cubing pretty regularly and would love to draft or cube with you.
That's so good. Well, Dan, this has been a pleasure. It was so good to get to meet you in person. You were a delight there, and that has not changed. This has been so fun.
Oh, thank you very much. If you see someone at a cube event dressed like Bill Murray at the end of Space Jam, where he comes in as a substitute and he's like wearing his warm up gear, that's me. unless someone else is doing that now, which is flattering. If more people want to wear a Toon Squad jersey with a t-shirt and a baseball cap backwards, I say do it.
Well, Dan, thank you so much again for your time and your passion here. This is a joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cade. Thanks for having me.